Hello people. Today we're going to talk about the complete disassembly and reassembly of a Sig MPX carriage assembly in 9mm. First thing we're going to do is remove the spring plate at the rear. That's this part. Easiest way to do that is to push the bolt head into the table and pull down on your springs uniformly, releasing the tension on the spring plate, and the spring plate will just fall right off. This will allow the springs to come off, and then the spring rods will push out the front of the op rod. This here is the op rod. All right, the next step is we want to remove this cotter pin. And once that cotter pin's removed, the firing pin and spring will drop out the back quite easily. This will allow your cam pin to turn freely. And it can be removed easily as well, and then the bolt head will come right out the front. And what that leaves us with now is the op rod. This is the op rod, and the bolt carrier. To separate these two parts, you'll want to take your punch and push it through this little hole in the bottom of your carrier, pushing in on a detent. And when the detent is depressed, you'll be able to, well, you got to make sure that you're on the head of the detent, and then the op rod will slide off with a little bit of manipulation. And then to remove this detent here and the spring that's above it, you'll want to just take your small punch and a hammer. Now you want to keep your thumb on top of this so the spring and detent don't get away from you. There's our pin. There's the detent. And there's a little spring inside. There it is. All right, and the last thing we've got here is the extractor. Now the extractor pin will only drift one way. This head is larger than this end, so we have to push it from this direction. Now you want to put a little bit of pressure on the back of the extractor, which will release the tension on the pin, and the pin will just drop right out. There's the extractor. There's the spring and the pin. Okay, now we're going to reassemble the carriage assembly. The first thing we want to do is take the extractor and the extractor spring. Now, one side of the extractor spring is going to be slightly larger than the other, and it's meant to snap into this recess. There. That'll hold it together while you reassemble the extractor into the bolt. Now you want to take your pin and put a little bit of tension on the spring and drift that pin from right to left. And you have to find where those holes line up. And there it is. And just to make sure it's in all the way, take your punch and give it a little press. All right, the next thing we want to do is put the bolt in the carrier. Line the cam pin hole up with the slot in the carrier and drop it in. Now you'll want to line this dot up with that dot on the carrier. That ensures that you've got the bolt kit, the the cam pin turned the right way. And then we put the firing pin and spring in the back. Again, you may need to use your punch to make sure that the firing pin is seated all the way down. See, it has to drop below that surface there for the cotter pin to catch it. Now, when putting the cotter pin in, you want to put these legs at the cotter pin left and right, not up and down like this. You want to put it in sideways like this. This will ensure that one side of that cotter pin doesn't stray off and not make it into the hole, which is what damages most cotter pins. All right. Next thing we want to do is put this detent assembly back in the op rod, and the spring will go first. Now you'll want to insert the flat end against the spring. This part of the detent is the detent that actually locks into the carrier, so that's how you want it to look when it's installed. Okay, I had to start that pin off camera because it was just, I didn't have enough swing room. So get the pin started, drop your spring in, drop your detent in. Oops. Now you'll want to depress it so that the pin can make it through this slot. Now that we've got the pin started, we can hit it a couple times without the punch. And it will hold. Just get it in a little bit farther and then go back to your punch. That's what it should look like then. Pin will be flush on both sides, and you'll have this little detent coming out. So to reassemble this back onto the bolt carrier, you want the op rod to be facing forward like this. And as you'll notice, there's a little ramp there for your detent to hit and then slide up. And it shouldn't drift off left or right. So that's in there good. All right, then we drop the spring rods. Oop. Pull down uniformly, and the spring plate will slide right back on. Now you'll have to get the tip of that rod in that slot there. And that's it. Now your carriage assembly is reassembled and ready to put back in your gun. Thanks for watching, people.